movie begins with the Kappa family, Guy, Priska, and their kids Trent and Maddox, excitedly heading to a mysterious resort they've never heard of before. As they arrive, the entire staff welcomes them warmly, with the manager personally greeting them and offering welcome drinks. After settling in, the manager leads the kids, Trent and Maddox, outside, where they meet Idlib, the manager's nephew. Trent quickly bonds with him, and they start exploring the resort together. Meanwhile, Maddox and her parents change into their bathing suits to relax on the beach, looking forward to an amazing vacation. However, they have no idea that a terrifying ordeal awaits them. The following morning, over breakfast, we meet other guests. There's Charles, a famous surgeon, who's joined by his elderly mother Agnes, his wife Crystal, and their 6-year-old daughter Kara. Crystal openly flirts with the waiter, hinting at cracks in her marriage. Then there's the Carmichael couple, Jaren and Patricia. Patricia suffers from epilepsy and experiences a seizure during breakfast, with Charles stepping in to help. After breakfast, the resort manager approaches the Kappas and recommends a secluded beach, just 5 kilometers away, and mentions he's already arranged transportation. Guy and Priska feel a bit puzzled by the VIP treatment but agree. They board the bus, joined unexpectedly by Charles's family, making the trip feel less exclusive. The drive takes them past a gate marked off-limits, though none of the guests seem to notice. At the end of the road, the driver points them toward the beach, barely interacting and simply saying he'll be back to pick them up at 5 p.m., leaving the guests to carry their belongings alone. The group walks through the forest and squeezes through a narrow cavern before finally arriving at the beach. The setting is beautiful, just as the resort manager promised. Both families start unpacking, but soon notice a lone man nearby, a famous rapper, mid-sized sedan. Maddox recognizes him and wants an autograph, but her dad insists she leave him alone. The kids start playing, digging up various items from the sand. Some toys, some beach gear. Oddly, there isn't a single fish or mollusk in the water. Trent decides to go swimming alone, but soon screams in terror when a dead body floats toward him. Charles, a surgeon, examines the body and deduces she likely drowned recently. He quickly accuses mid-sized sedan, suggesting the rapper must have killed her, especially when they see him bleeding from the nose. Mid-sized sedan tries to explain that he's not involved, but the others remain suspicious. Meanwhile, Trent mentions his swimsuit feels tighter, and Charles's mother, Agnes, complains of breathing difficulties. Growing worried, Charles tries to call for help but finds no signal. Just then, the Carmichael couple, Jaren and Patricia, arrive. The group briefs them, and Jaren immediately decides to stop the driver from leaving. However, as he dashes back into the cavern, he suddenly collapses, unconscious. Moments later, Jaren regains consciousness back on the beach, confused and disoriented. The others are equally puzzled, but the confusion quickly intensifies as Agnes, Charles's mother, suddenly stops breathing. Charles tries to resuscitate her, but sadly, she doesn't survive. Meanwhile, Jaren and Patricia distract Trent and Maddox, the Kappa kids. When Jaren asks Trent his age, he says 6. But he appears years older. Prisa arrives, shocked to see her kids visibly aged, making them nearly unrecognizable. Seeing the mounting chaos, mid-sized sedan tries to escape, with Charles chasing him. They reach the cavern but immediately black out and wake back up on the beach, realizing they're trapped. Desperation rises as Prisa insists they find another way out, but every attempt near the canyon leads to unconsciousness, leaving them stranded with 2 dead bodies on the beach. Meanwhile, the children continue aging at an alarming rate, leaving the adults panicked as they struggle to find new clothes. The Kappas speculate a virus is behind the strange phenomena, while Charles, growing increasingly paranoid, slashes Sedan's face in frustration. Astonishingly, the wound heals instantly. Maddox takes Sedan aside, where he reveals he suffers from a rare blood condition and is as clueless as the rest. The adults then realize that the woman's body they found was suffering from sclerosis, hinting at a medical link. Suddenly, Prisa collapses in pain, revealing that her minor tumor has grown to the size of a tennis ball due to accelerated aging. Charles decides to operate with a pocket knife. When he cuts her, the incision heals instantly, forcing everyone to hold the wound open so he can remove the tumor. After a tense moment, Prisa regains consciousness, now free of the illness. But their relief is short-lived, as they notice that the woman's body from earlier has completely decomposed to dust and bones, despite only hours passing. As the shock settles in, Prisa, a museum curator, examines the newly decomposed body and points out that such a level of decay typically takes at least 7 years. This revelation makes the group realize that time on this beach is racing ahead at an alarming rate. Prisa calculates that half an hour here equates to a year in human life. Meanwhile, Trent and Kara return, now significantly older. Even more shockingly, Kara is heavily pregnant, a result of an encounter that must have happened mere moments ago. The group scrambles to assist as she goes into labor. Crystal, Kara's mother, faints from anxiety, and when she comes to, the baby has already passed away. It aged too quickly to survive, unable to develop strength in time. Trent, though now physically an adult, is mentally still a child, confused by the unfolding horror. Meanwhile, Charles's paranoia deepens, leading to erratic outbursts. He even lashes out at Sedan, repeatedly stabbing him. Due to Sedan's blood condition, his wounds don't clot, leading to a tragic death. Overcome with despair, Jaren decides to swim out for help, preferring the risks over a slow death. After he leaves, Guy realizes a disturbing pattern. All the guests have medical conditions. Prisa, for example, had a tumor, Charles shows symptoms of schizophrenia, Sedan had a blood disorder, and the dead woman had sclerosis. Guy suggests that their invitation was no accident, especially since Prisa received hers from a sweepstakes on a pharmacy receipt, indicating the resort owners knew their medical backgrounds. Shortly after, Maddox discovers Jaren's body floating in the water, drowned after blacking out. Patricia collapses in grief, and the rest of the group falls deeper into despair. Kara, determined to escape, tries to climb the canyon walls but loses consciousness near the top, falling to her death. Soon after, Patricia succumbs to a seizure and passes away as well. The bodies begin to accumulate, and the remaining survivors are left with little hope of ever making it off the beach alive. As night falls, the Kappa parents lose touch with reality, barely remembering their reason for escape. Trent and Maddox find a journal listing previous visitors and their medical issues, realizing they're being watched. Trent spots a distant camera light, confirming surveillance. Meanwhile, Charles attacks a nearly blind Guy. Prisa, now deaf, realizes and defends Guy, cutting Charles with a rusty knife, which infects him fatally. Crystal, horribly aged, tries to attack the kids but fractures her bones, dying painfully. In the end, only the Kappa family remains. Guy and Prisa profess love to each other before passing, leaving their distraught children alone on the beach. The next morning, Trent and Maddox wake up in their late 40s, realizing they'll eventually end up like their parents. Accepting this, they decide to spend their remaining time building sandcastles when Trent recalls the puzzle given by Idlib. After some effort, he finally decodes it. My uncle doesn't like the coral. This cryptic message hints that the coral may be their way out. Acting on their last hope, they dive into the water and make their way toward the coral reef, eventually discovering an underwater tunnel. As they try to swim through it, Maddox's dress gets caught on the coral. She struggles but ultimately frees herself, and the two siblings swim to safety. Meanwhile, on the hillside overlooking the beach, a man watches, revealing himself to be none other than the driver who had dropped them off. After confirming no one is left alive, he contacts his boss and reports that Trial 73 is complete, then packs his belongings and leaves. We're taken next to a scientific lab, where the resort manager explains to a team of scientists that the beach allows them to conduct years' worth of clinical trials in a single day. Each family was given a welcome drink, laced with experimental drugs based on their medical conditions. Back at the resort, Trent and Maddox, who have miraculously survived, confront a vacationing police officer, handing over the notebook they'd found with records of the missing families. Shocked, the officer makes calls and confirms that these people are indeed listed as missing. Soon, law enforcement raids the medical lab, arresting all the scientists involved in the experiments. In the final scene, the Kappa siblings are safely escorted home in a helicopter, leaving the horrors of the beach behind them. The end.